feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled Movie Podcast, episode 140. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, we made it to another year's end, a best of episode.
We're the Blue Boys. We just
Yep.
recorded our Avatar: The Way of Water review. Still technically under embargo, I think, for another couple hours. So you can read our tweet thoughts about it.
Our social media sentiments on it, which, spoiler alert, we were a little bit underwhelmed by it, but we'll get more into detail and very specific with the tech on that side.
Tech focused review.
Yeah.
We have strong thoughts on high frame rate. Surprise. So please go check that out. If you're listening to this right away, that'll be available. I think it's at 12 Eastern or 12:30 Eastern. You guys can check out our Avatar: The Way of Water review. But today, Eric, we're doing our annual best films of the year. This is always kind of my favorite time. I can't believe 2022 is over for one, or almost over. I love these episodes where we kind of look back at the year. Each of us bring our best films of the year, however we wanted to put together that list. Spoilers, you can go on our Letterboxd and see them in actual rankings and stuff like that. I like to put mine in alphabetical order, much like, you see the Barack Obama best of lists and things like that. Last year we spoofed that. This year I did kind of a different format. You can check out all the lists on our social medias and different things like that. But this will be a conversation of our favorite films of the year. We've reviewed a lot of them. Some of them we didn't review for certain reasons, and we'll talk about them here in detail. And then next week you guys can come back, and my favorite episode is our most anticipated of the next year. So we'll do our 23 most anticipated films of 2023 next
23
week.
and me.
And we'll also look back. Also, one of my favorite things is looking back at the last year's most anticipated list and seeing did all of those movies live up to that hype? Because I feel like every year we have one or two where we're like, that did not pan out how we wanted it to.
Yeah. What's the motherless Brooklyn of 2022?
Yeah. So I'm excited to kind of look back. But today, or look forward and look back. But today we are looking back at 2022. Eric, how you doing?
I'm good, Matt. I have to confess that I haven't completely put together my final best of list.
We can scrap this if you want.
No, we've committed to the bit.
Live, baby.
We're doing it live. Normally what I do when it comes to my Letterboxd stuff is I kind of do tiers. So it's kind of, there is one movie that is my number one. And
you rank them, but they're kind of in groupings. And then at the end of the year, you sort of actually.
Well, I do like an alphabetical list. Normally,
that's what I did too.
Out of 15 films, I'll rank them alphabetically. There is one that is my number one pick, but
which alphabetically it might be at the top anyway. So
yeah, it is. So perfect. But yeah, it's one of those things where like there's still some stuff I would like to also even catch up on that I haven't had a chance to see.
Same.
That are kind of smaller movies that there's a film called Playground that I really wanted to check out. There's a couple things from Kino Lorber that I still haven't had a chance to watch yet. And, things can change, but as of now, I think there is a good solid 15 movies that I could select off of that list. And even more than that, overall, I think it was a pretty good year for films. And like, even, and I guess this is a plug for it in a way, logging movies on my Rotten Tomatoes account and going back through the rest of the year. A big thank you to you, Matt, for helping me with that. And kind of going through, the Rogers stuff and kind of looking at like what stood out and what didn't. I have to say it was, a pretty solid year overall.
Oh yeah. I struggled putting together a top. I have 14. I didn't even specifically. I think it's because I couldn't fit 15 onto the graphic that I was making without it being too squished. So I eliminated. What do we think about? Here's the spoiler of what the one is that I took off before I get into it. Petite Maman. I can't forget if I
I had it
can't
on my
forget.
list last year.
So that's what I mean. It's like, did I? And then I'm like, so I took it off because
But
like
you can put it on this year
you
as
could,
well.
because it technically got released in North America this year.
Yes, so it was released in February, but it also was released the previous year for awards contention for that one week run. So you do have movies this year, like Return to Seoul and One Fine Day, and or is it Morning? One Fine
Morning.
One Fine Day is the George Clooney movie, which is terrible. One Fine Morning. So you have films like that are technically eligible, but they won't be getting their theatrical release until February and March in Canada. So that's always been a weird gray zone when it comes to some of the international movies. Like
it's really
even
your
Memoria,
decision, right? Yeah,
like that movie could be every year now because it's on a constant road show.
I think that's just these lists in general is just go by your own rules. Who cares? Like whatever you want to put on it. You want to put a TV show on there like Twin Peaks or I might put Last of Us on my most anticipated next year.
Could you imagine putting a TV show on your... I mean, I think one person did for the Sight and Sound list. They did put Twin Peaks The Return, but I think it was only one person. So,
it's all, again, everything is subjective. There is no objective truth except for science. But like,
that is
I don't want to be one
objective.
of those. I don't want to be an anti-science person. But I mean, when it comes to art and opinion,
unless your name is anti-science,
sure,
Ant Science.
My Aunt Science made me cookies. I fucking forget what the hell I was even saying. Oh, subjectiveness.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to, something like the White Lotus or all these things that are technically TV shows, but it's all fucking what's your favorite?
Well, Bo Burnham's Inside, right? Like
that was us. It was our number one in 2020, right? For both of us. And
what a great year.
I mean, that movie rips, man. So yeah, I don't know. So I took Petite Maman off because I'm like, I feel like I put it on last year's list, but I don't remember. And because my rules are, I go by the like Oscar deadline kind of like awards rules. So like if it was released at all last year, even if it was for 1 week in December, I usually go by, was it eligible for this year's awards or Oscars? And I go by those rules when it comes to release date. And then when it comes to, what we just said, it's mostly subjective. Like there was the year I put Watchmen. I put Twin Peaks, I think, on best films of the year, things like that. So, I mean, it's just, sometimes you want to spice things up and you throw in that thing to kind of go, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a stance or have a stance on that. So
it's a topic of conversation.
This year, I did not put any TV shows on my best films of the year. I did separate them, but I'll put out a separate graphic for best TV shows and maybe we'll do a small section.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised that The Rehearsal didn't make it on.
Is it on yours?
No. But it's the one thing where I would kind of be like, that is blurring the lines a little bit. I mean, even though it's not cinematic, but
like The Rehearsal and/or White Lotus, I love. Like there was almost too much good TV this year for me personally, where I couldn't pick that one thing that I'm like, oh, I need to champion this and put it in my best films list. It's like, oh, we're getting to that point where I'm like, I've watched enough TV this year, which really slowed down on my watching movies at home, where I could be like, oh, this mini series or this show was fantastic. So I might do a whole separate thing on that. But yeah, overall, I'm with you. And we kind of brought this up on a recent episode as well of, was this year front loaded? Was it a great year for movies? I think it was a banger year for movies. I do think it was a little front loaded, but then it was pretty consistent that we got. I think it was not a great year for like blockbusters, I guess, or maybe like franchise filmmaking, because Top Gun, I know, shut up. I know Top Gun. Like, you know what I mean by like franchise filmmaking? Like, I feel like the MCU movies didn't really hit this year. For someone who is a huge, MCU dork and stuff like that. Like, you got to think Doctor Strange, Thor: Love and Thunder. Um, were those the only two? What am I even
Black
forgetting?
Panther, Wakanda
Black Panther. Oh,
Forever.
Black Panther's great. But again, I don't have Black Panther on my list. Like, I thought I did like Black Panther quite a bit, but I feel like franchise filmmaking this year, if
Franchise
I'm
fatigue,
looking
maybe.
a little bit, I think maybe. But then I feel like that left it open for a lot of great other stuff, which is always a good thing. So I'm kind of with you. I do think it was a little front loaded, but overall I think it was a pretty great year for movies.
Yeah, I almost rather have it be front loaded. I mean, ultimately, what you want, and it's never going to happen, is to have it spread out throughout the entire year.
Yeah.
But at least if it's front loaded, you have more time to catch up with these things from the first half and the first 6 months of the year. Like if something gets released in February or March, something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's going to be a slow rollout. So people are going to be talking about it, but it's still going to be a film that maybe isn't playing, in wide release until the end of March into April. And, even past then, if you felt uncomfortable not wanting to go back to the movie theaters, quite yet, it still was there. And then eventually when it made its way onto, iTunes and streaming services, and it was available on 4K and Blu-ray on physical media. So it gives a movie like that time to really become a part of the conversation and to catch on and for people to see it. It's the same thing with RRR, these two maximalist movies that, I guess RRR would kind of be considered more of a blockbuster in terms of its budget than Everything Everywhere All at Once, but it allows those movies a little bit more time to grow and get that appreciation it needs, where if you were to release Everything Everywhere All at Once, in November or December, I think, the response to it would eventually pick up, but maybe it wouldn't be an awards contender the way it is now, because it's had some time to really, stew and allow people to just, enjoy it and watch it more than once and have conversations like we've been having, all year about it. So, like watching something in the early part of the year and having it stay with you is a testament to the quality of the filmmaking. Again, whether it be something like Everything Everywhere All at Once, or even Turning Red, and even going into the earlier parts of the summer, like something like Nope is a movie that I weirdly think, even though it's a studio film, Jordan Peele is at the height of his powers, I kind of feel it's an underrated movie, in terms of it being an original film, but also kind of taking the elements that we're familiar with it is the best Spielberg movie of this year, and taking those elements and kind of playing with them. And as we got closer to the fall festival season, which both Matt and I are so grateful for, because we're able to see things much earlier, and a lot of people now, considering that we're both Critics' Choice members, we're still catching up with. And we had a chance to see the Glass Onions and The Women Talking, and the After Suns, in advance,
In
to let
September, right? In August even, yeah.
yeah, to give them time, because I do feel there are some movies you don't go into a film and you don't watch a movie. Like you can with some movies. Like some movies you will have an instant reaction once the film is done, but I do think there are some movies that demand you know rumination, and demand you to take your time to think about it and to understand what it's doing, and whether or not it's challenging you in an interesting way, or if it's perspective is something you haven't seen before. And sometimes a movie needs that in order to be considered the best of. I mean, there might be a movie that we saw this year that we both really liked, that if we were to revisit one of our best of lists, whether it be this year or years before, that we would go back to it and be like, oh man, I can't believe this movie's not on the list. Or
That happens all the time, man, for
yeah.
me personally. Like, I look back at my other best of years and I see how my perspective or opinions change, like what stands the test of time or what lingers in my brain 3 years down the line or 4 years down the line, right? What have I wanted to go back and revisit, or not necessarily even revisit, but what has stayed with me? What has become, more important to me? And like, even this list that I'm going to give you, and that's usually when we would rank it from, you know, up to number one of the year or whatever. But for the most part, I see that shifting all the time when I look back years later, or something that really landed with me in the moment and then faded later. And I go, okay, maybe that was the experience of seeing it at that moment or things like that. And that's nothing wrong with that either. That means you enjoyed the movie at that moment, but it's just interesting of what movies, it even goes with Oscar winners or, these awards and things like that, or things that don't win awards, like what years down the line or what movies are people going to remember or revisit, and things like that. So it's not just us, I think, as a collective um, people. You see what movies do that too, right? Where, even classics that get reevaluated down the line that didn't get good receptions when they came out, or got tepid receptions when they came out, or great receptions when they came out. And then as the years go by, you go, does anyone care about the artist? I know it got good reviews and won Best Picture, but like, has anyone watched that movie since the year it came out? Like, I don't know if people have
Or
yearly
talked about it.
yeah, like things like that. And I'm not just trying to shit on the artist, but like there are those movies then that got middling reviews, but throughout time they, become favorites. And The Thing is one of those, I think, right? And
Yeah, well,
like,
I mean, when it was released, both critics and audiences hated it, partly because it was released a couple weeks after E.T., but then
yeah,
also, like it was a much darker, visceral, grosser movie than people were expecting or could handle at the time. And, Carpenter got to make the movie he wanted to. But I think
yeah,
also because of it being such a failure, it made him more wary of the industry as a whole, because you can tell with watching a movie like The Thing, he put his heart and soul into that movie. And when somebody rejects you that way, when, it's one thing to make a movie for work and things like that, but when you truly put your life, what you feel represents you, into something, and it
yeah.
gets rejected, I can understand being standoffish in the future. And, like, that's kind of what happened with Carpenter. And that sometimes happens with filmmakers, especially when, it's something that is coming directly from them, and it's written by them, and it's not only directed by them. And even though, The Thing has become more than just a cult classic in the last 42 years, or 40 years, 40 years, because 82, because I was thinking, yeah. So 1982,
It's the
40
40th
years.
anniversary this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So over the 40 years, that sometimes doesn't work for the studio. You can't tell the studio, oh, this will make its money back in 40 years or become a great thing in 40 years. It's instant gratification,
Yeah,
right? you
sure.
need you
Yeah, yeah.
need to, make your money back in order to get to make the next movie, or then, you're kind of weirdly demoted in that way, where it's like, if you don't use all your resources, your quota is changed the following year.
Mhm.
And this is all kind of like, business side of things, but
But even when it comes to your perspective on things, there are things that I even watch and I don't like them when I see them, and then I revisit them years later, and I go, either because I'm a little bit older, or things like that. Like I completely change my tune on them. So there's always that too. So
yeah, like there's a movie right now that I'm thinking of where, like, after watching it, I really liked it, and we reviewed it, and I'm liking it more. And I could only imagine maybe what the next watch would be like. But even listening to the Film Junk review of it afterwards, it's like, oh man, I really want to watch this again. Is Bones and All, and it's not going to be
yeah,
on my my best of
same.
list, but
But
I voted for it in a couple categories for
same.
the Critics' Choice Awards, and I really do like the movie, and I have thought about it more than I was expecting to.
I
Um,
agree. After
you know,
Sun, another one for me, which I think when I came out of that, it was the first movie we screened for TIFF, and there's a lot of buildup in that moment too, and maybe too much pressure on that first movie we see for the festival. Um, I was very medium on it, or I was very like, yeah, I liked it, but it didn't hit me until I kind of sat with it and thought about the movie more, much like you were mentioning earlier, Eric, of just like some movies you just kind of need a little bit, and it's not that instant like, did you like it, right when you walk out of a theater. And I hate
Yeah.
that. Like if you know me, like I'm one of those guys, I don't want to talk about a movie. Like the only person I do that with is you, because I feel like I'm comfortable enough with you where we can kind of figure out our thoughts on a movie as we talk to one another and not feel like we're trying to impress the other person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
There's no
where
showboating. It's just an honest conversation between two
yeah, and
friends.
then you're trying to go, oh, what did you think? What did you think? And you're going, I get your perspective on something, you get my perspective on something, and I'm kind of building how I feel about a movie. When I feel like there's so much of this of like people want to talk, and maybe that's what people do with others, and I'm just not comfortable enough to do that. But like I'm not trying to impress other people, but I don't like giving my opinion right after I get out of a movie. It's just because I'm like, every movie I like to kind of sit on for a little bit or figure out how I feel. You might have an instant feeling whether you liked it or you did not like it, or you enjoyed yourself or you did not enjoy yourself. But like, I feel like to fully form your thoughts, and that can kind of transform or evolve as you kind of sit on it for a little bit. Which is like some of these movies that are on this list throughout the year, either just stuck with me or I've wanted to go back and rewatch it. I've flipped back and forth between RRR and Everything Everywhere All at Once. After Sun climbed up there, and like all these different things. Certain movies fade, like The Fablemans, or even The Batman to an extent, which still made my list, but like I found myself going like, maybe that's because it's 3 hours long and something like that, of going like, and I did see it twice, like very closely back to back, but
Bat to bat.
a movie that I really, really loved at the time, and can't wait for more in that universe. Probably my favorite superhero movie of the year.
And a full
Um,
experience too, right?
yeah,
Like you're we talked about this with our Avatar review where like yeah, we know we're getting more of Matt Reeves's Batman in the Batman universe, but the story that's told is singular
singular. Yeah.
to the structure and the world building within this version of Gotham City. So you're watching it and you're thinking to yourself, it's very satisfying. And I think again, that's another movie that kind of helped being released early in the year, not because it needed extra time to think about per se, but it just, you do appreciate when you get a really good movie early on because it kind of sustains you.
Oh yeah.
We love talking about movies, good or bad, or even middle of the road, but there is something that gives you that little extra boost, that push, that kind of like, oh, this is all worth it. And we're getting something that we can really, love and appreciate throughout the year. Now, is Everything Everywhere All at Once my favorite movie of the year now? No, but it was for the longest time. And one thing I am so grateful for is having that movie for so long and
So
and
in that
and
early,
loving it.
and I remember during that review, I said, if there's a movie that is better than this year, then it's a great year for movies. And that
Yeah.
happened for you, right? So
Yep.
like, and for me, spoilers, I still think Everything Everywhere All at Once is my favorite film of the year. And we'll go over our full list. We're just kind of talking about the year as a whole, but like, I flip back and forth between RRR, Top Gun Maverick, like those three movies, like just having those three movies, and After Sun, to your point, Eric, very different than those other three, but like to have movies on that like level. And then for me, even something like Babylon, again, if you see there's a theme with the stuff that I really loved this.
Babylon.
There's a theme with the stuff that I really loved this year, which is just bombastic, maximalist, in your face, shit on your head movies.
Elephant
Like,
shit on your head.
yeah.
But that goes to the theme, I think, of this year as well, where people were coming back to the theater, right? So you want, we sometimes talk about this in a negative context, but having the most doesn't necessarily mean the best, having the most
Sometimes it
sound,
does.
but sometimes when you haven't had it for a while, and especially when you haven't had the experience in a movie theater, sitting with a group of people, watching the same thing, but having different perspectives on it, that can be a celebration. So even something like a movie that you haven't even fully watched and I loathed, Elvis, I understand why people do really love it, because there is something about like you're getting so much of it, and sometimes you need that
Excess or
excess in
yeah.
order to enjoy, because part of the theatrical experience is seeing something that you can watch it at home, but when you watch it at home, is it going to have that same effect on you?
Which
And I
Elvis
think
did not, where I
no,
needed to
but
sit
I
in a
think
theater to see
RRR
that.
is a great example of this, because we both saw RRR, whether it be on the Z5 app or on Netflix, and we both loved the movie, loved it.
Watching it at home, yeah.
Yeah, but then having watched it again at the TIFF Bell Lightbox,
Transformative.
Yes,
yeah, it's
no, it is. It
was
absolutely is.
yeah.
And so
It
that
was
kind of shows you the power of film, or
yeah, I agree with you. It's corny, and obviously us doing this show, and how much the theatrical experience means to us. We talk about it enough. Go listen to our Avatar review. Yeah, man. Like it really RRR at Lightbox. It's a good kind of transition to that. Like, because I don't think we've talked about it yet on this show, right?
I think we have. I think we at least
did
a
we do it
little
last
bit.
episode? Yeah, I forget.
No. Back when
oh, we did talk about
f-
RRR. No,
Yes.
we gushed about RRR for sure.
Yeah.
And when I watched it finally, because you brought it up to me months before, and then I was like, oh, I really do want to watch it. Just that 3-hour runtime is daunting. Also, the year of movies just getting insanely longer and longer. Like my bladder can't take it anymore. I will scream from the rooftops with intermissions. And speaking of intermissions,
you're fighting high frame rates and long movies.
Yeah, long movies I'm fine with, because like great movies are great movies, and if a movie is great, you want more of it. I want it to never end, right? Like
and RRR is a perfect example of that, especially when you're watching with an audience that's feeding on that energy.
And shout out to Peter Koplowski or whoever asked for the intermission version of the movie, because bless them, because we got an intermission and it made the movie even better, dude. Like it just, that the audience feeding off of that movie, and then you get to that 2-hour mark where they put the intermission, and it's just at the perfect part where you're just fucking hyped up for that last act, and it can make a movie better. And then I can also go to the bathroom, I can also get snacks, and then you can have someone in the audience go, holy shit, right when the intermission title card comes on, and you're like, yes, this is that collective experience I want. I wish every movie had this, and like give me that opportunity to talk halfway through the movie to people of what you think so far and what's going to come up. Like I love that kind of stuff. But yeah, seeing RRR with an audience was just a blast. And I remember the first time I saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, even though it was a press screening, my wife got to come with me, and I remember both of us just started, like I said, my brain being blown out of the back of my head, just being like, I can't believe this, and we're getting this so early in the year. And I mean, even Top Gun Maverick we talked about too, where it's just like no one expected. Did we even have we had Top Gun Maverick on our most anticipated, I'm assuming. Did we? I don't even know if we did,
because
That's
I don't think question. it was a movie that people were expecting. Like, it's like, what do you expect from Top Gun Maverick? It's, yes, it has Tom Cruise returning, but it doesn't have the cachet a Mission Impossible movie has. Mission Impossible has sustained itself over the last decade or so, where there's only one. We were talking about this with Avatar: The Way of Water. This is going to be a long plug for that review, but there's only one Top Gun movie. Yes, has it been important to pop culture and influenced, blockbuster filmmaking and the Bruckheimer kind of brand? Absolutely, but there's only the one movie, so it's like, we didn't
have Top Gun Maverick on our most anticipated movies,
so there weren't any expectations for it, and then it kind of blows people out of the water, and the Na'vi out of the water in this case, and you're just kind of surprised by like how rewatchable that movie is. Like, that's a film that, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, like RRR, they are longer movies, but they're also designed in a way that you can revisit them over and over again and still enjoy the roller coaster ride that they are. And I feel Top Gun Maverick is that perfect example where it's so perfectly structured and engineered, and like every scene, you know, leads into one great action set piece after another, and then, you know, there's never a down moment, but the pacing of it never feels like it wavers at any point, and it's just such, like, it is the definition of a roller coaster ride. And you know, you have Tom Cruise kind of giving one of his best performances within the context of, you know, the blockbuster world that he's created for himself. Obviously he can be a great actor and, you know, picking roles in like Magnolia and things like that, but I think those years have gone by the wayside for now at least. But within, you know, and he's good in the Mission Impossible movies, but it just felt like everything clicked with this. Like every aspect of that movie was beautifully constructed in a way that made going back to the movies just that, like, a hell yeah experience.
Absolutely, dude. Other themes of this year. I'd say on the animated front, we had great things like Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. We had some a great Pixar movie in Turning Red that unfortunately went straight to Disney Plus. I kind of put this in the animated category, even though I know it was sort of hybrid, but Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, I still kind of put in that animated side of things because it's mostly animated characters, but even though it's got that Roger Rabbit kind of vibe of stuff. Two Disney Plus movies with Turning Red and Chip 'n Dale that I thought were some of the best of the year. GDT's Pinocchio, another streaming movie, but a great stop motion animated film that, again, another movie, speaking of the first time I was like, damn, I really like that, and then saw it again, I was like, damn, this movie is great. And a surprise for me, because I feel like after Zemeckis Pinocchio and just how much we are familiar with that story, you're not expecting to be surprised in a Pinocchio movie, if that makes sense. And I thought,
And you're just a little burnt out on, you know, the story being told, you know, in the span of only a few months, because Zemeckis's Pinocchio was September, Guillermo's was in you know, December. So there's not a lot of time there. I mean, there's a lot of movies in between, but there's not a lot of time to kind of be like, okay, you know, like let me have a bit of a buffer there to kind of reset. And
how different those are. One's an assembly line kind of cookie cutter.
Not even that. It doesn't even feel like there's anything. It's a soulless, empty vessel.
Ironically,
of nothing.
Soulless. And then, and then you get the most heartfelt, like passionate version of the story that you've seen in a very long time in Del Toro's version, and it's couldn't be more different. And absolutely, if you haven't seen Pinocchio on Netflix, go check it out. It's like you might be hesitant because you feel like you've seen Pinocchio a bazillion times, but like it's fantastic. I know people were saying that we got a lot of stop motion this year with Mad God, Wendell and Wild, Pinocchio. Is there one more that I'm missing? And I need to catch up with catch up with Mad God and Wendell and Wild. I haven't seen them, but on the other side, I liked Lightyear quite a bit. I know it's kind of been lost this year. Like, I know it's not something you need to shout out, but it kind of underperformed. And I feel like it's a shame not enough people saw that IMAX version of that movie, because I feel like that was something from an animated side of things that I hadn't seen before, even though, you know, it is just the movie about the toy, or the man, not the toy. And I thought it was a fun movie, a good sci-fi, you know, baby's first sci-fi movie. But that IMAX version of Lightyear I thought was pretty spectacular. A movie that I just feel like we'll go, oh yeah, Pixar made that Buzz Lightyear movie like down the line. Like, I feel like it just wasn't really, maybe it's doing better on Disney Plus now. I don't know how it's doing, but yeah, good year for animation. And then on the streaming side of things, I really liked Prey. I know you didn't, Eric, but like
I didn't dislike it. I think it's good. I just think it's one of those movies where like it made sense why it was available on the streamer and not theatrical. And like some people were making an argument.
I wish it went theatrical.
Yeah.
Jackass Forever.
Yes.
Tied for winner of best ensemble for the Boston Film Critics Association.
Yep. With Women Talking.
Talking.
Which also, again, an early release back in February, where it's like, you appreciate getting those films throughout the year, and they're not just, I mean, not that Jackass Forever would be an awards movie, but hey, it is now. So, like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you get something good in January into June, like it reminds you why you love movies so much. There's part of you that does this because, I don't want to say it's just a job, but there's part of you that's like, okay, this is your profession. This is something that you cover on a weekly basis, and you want to give everything a chance. You want to challenge yourself, whether it be kind of the most kind of thinly created film, or something that has more layers and texture to it that you'll think about later on. It's sort of the nature of the beast when it comes to this industry, that it's always moving, it's never stopping. And so you see so much that you forget that, like, I saw this movie back in March, but I've never thought about it ever again. Or I saw this movie back in...
I've had a couple of those. I was going through, I guess we can talk about some of that. We don't do worst of lists here. I just don't feel like it's productive at all.
No.
Even like talking about, what you thought were the worst films of the year. Could I say how much I disliked Tar, or like other things?
Well,
like
I'll be
that?
saying how much I like it. So there's a nice balance there.
I could, but I just don't. It's not enjoyable. I don't need to argue with anyone. It's all subjective. Even people who make worst of lists, like, I'm like, just focus on what you enjoy. Like, why put more attention on things that you didn't like? I know, like, negativity gets more clicks and gets more conversation. I feel like just put your thoughts out when a movie comes out, and if you didn't like it, move on to things that you do enjoy. But there are a few things that, not that they're awful, but like, there are a lot of movies that I go, oh shit, that was this year. You know what I mean? Like the 355.
I knew that was coming, because we saw that at the end of December, but it didn't come out until the beginning of mid-January, because theaters were still closed at that point, right? So
yeah, but we saw it like mid-December. I feel like, I feel like we saw that way early, but then I was like, oh shit, that was a this year movie. Even Scream, that I forgot came out this year. Like, if you're going back to the earlier stuff, what else? I mean, you mentioned like Moonfall.
What a classic. And that didn't even get a theatrical release in Canada. I know. So
Death on the Nile, I forgot, was like a this year movie. Uncharted, I forgot, came out, and like, didn't even realize there was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie this year. But then I remember you talked about it on one of the episodes, and then like, stuff like that, where you go back and you're like, oh my God, like, this year feels like it flew by. But then
we got two cuts of Fathers too.
Yeah, there are those things where you're like, oh yeah, that came out this year. Like, even going into March, where you have the Batman and After Yang and Fresh and Atom Project and Turning Red and
The Northman, and
yeah, I'm like, oh my God, like that feels like yesterday. But then those movies that I mentioned that were just a month before them feel like 8 years ago. Like, it's weird. But I mentioned a bunch of movies there that came out in March that you're all gonna see on my list, right? Like, I think Everything Everywhere was March as well, right? Like, March was a banger month, and that's when I started to go like, oh shit, like, this year front loaded with a ton of great stuff. And then The Bubble came out. So
see, there's another movie where it's like, oh
Morbius.
Yeah, that was this
year.
The
Bubble and Morbius came out on the same day. What a day.
God. Remember when we reviewed those? I think that almost broke us, or it did break us for a while. Because those are the films where it's like, no year is complete without a bad movie, multiple bad movies. And you have to understand that nobody sets out to necessarily make a bad film. But when you see a bunch of them in a row, it can really... it really turns you off from ever wanting to review things or watch things. And I think that's where criticism gets a bad rap, because it's like, film critics usually, I'm sure there are a couple people that, thrive off of the negativity, but film critics are like are average moviegoers as well, where it's like we love seeing stuff that we want to talk about and we want to recommend
Oh,
and
you hate it when you see a movie that you
yeah.
hate or don't like, and you have to give it a negative review. Like those are the hardest, almost. Like
Like I
middle of
don't
the
know
road
what's
stuff is hard,
worse. And I'm a part of the problem too, so I'm not trying to exclude myself or
but
seem superior, but I don't know what's worse, the movie Morbius or the film Twitter social media making fun of it, because
oh,
it's
remember
almost
we got it back in theaters and then it bombed again.
God, what a wild ride. Jared Leto, man.
Uh,
This year for him between
we just talked
Morbius.
about how we shouldn't focus on things we didn't like, but um, remember the post-credit scene for Morbius? I don't know if we ever talked about it because we doubt we did a spoiler cast or anything. We just reviewed it, but like I can't believe that
Small
happened.
mercy.
I
Yeah.
can't believe that was real. Like the ADR that Michael Keaton was doing, and like how it felt like you said it, like an AI created it, Chat
Yeah.
GPT created the fucking Morbius
The Michael
post-credit
Keaton
scene.
AI.
I just like I can't even. We're on the eve of getting. Actually, probably as you're listening to this, we've probably already gotten a Across the Spider-Verse trailer, which we will talk about on next week's episode, which makes sense because that's the most anticipated movies of 2023 episode. Which will be great because a lot of trailers should probably drop this week with Avatar, so it makes sense to do that episode and talk about some of those trailers and what we're most anticipated for. Um, uh, I forget what I was saying. Spider-Verse. Oh yeah, just like Morbius, just like the complete and utter like Sony doing great things in Spider-Verse, and then going, what the hell is going on with what they're trying to do with Spider-Man on the Sony side of things, and Morbius. What an event that was. um my poor wife came to see that with me. I don't know why. And like, I remember just both of us being like, oh, that wasn't even like entertainingly bad. Like that was just really bad. And then that post-credit scene just being like, what are they even trying to do? What are they trying to do? It made no sense.
I think that's the one kind of silver
Memorable, I
lining,
guess,
or maybe a positive, is that at least there's still some curiosity or intrigue in terms of what are they trying to do, because you can't really figure it out, especially when you have such a massive franchise that they're working from, where when you watch something like Amsterdam, you're just waiting until that movie ends. You are just
Yeah.
praying that the end credits will come faster than Taylor Swift's cameo in that movie. And so like you're just like, there are just some movies that are more of a struggle than others, and then like
There's highs and lows every year, right? That's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like you don't need to necessarily make a worst of the year list, but there's always going to be highs and lows, especially if you see as much as we do. And I think that's just part of the gig. And
I
I
think you're
think that's
turning into an
why
AI, Matt. You
you
were
sounded like that for me.
you're
You sounded
breaking up,
like a
and now you're
robot.
just a frozen image. Are we being
You're
Michael Keaton?
You're frozen. Yeah, someone heard our conversation, and you seem to be getting better now for
Now, yeah,
me.
you're
But
still
yeah,
pixelated, but
same
yeah.
with you. But now you got better, so I'm
So this is
sure
gonna
it
be fun
sounds
for you
fine on your
editing.
end. No, I think it should be fine because it records everything locally. Anyway, yeah, highs and lows every year, and I feel like that's the thing that at the end of the year, this time of year is always fun because you go to like holiday events with your family, and I feel like you probably get this too, Eric, where people want to talk about movies with you, and I always get the thing of like, you hate everything, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't fucking hate everything. It's just I see a lot, and I see a lot of crap. I'm like, I hate that comment. It's just like, no, I see 300 movies in a year and you see 4. So of course the 4 you saw were 4 good ones. You saw Top Gun Maverick, you saw Everything Everywhere All at Once. You saw like a Marvel movie you wanted to see and one other thing. And I'm like,
But I'm sure you'll get some people saying, "Oh, I saw Elvis and I thought it was amazing," and then you're kind of like, you want to be polite
there's
and
always those
respectful too. So
there's always those, right? I've had that, Avatar will be that movie probably. Mind you, we're going to see it again this week, so maybe that changes based on on what our thoughts are on that second watch. But I've always had that one movie, Mad Max, other things like one per year that you're kind of on the opposite side of the consensus. So when your family goes to see those movies and talks to you, it does sound like you hate everything, or you hate like. I'm like, no, I'm not one of those contrarian critics. I promise you, I'm
Or
not.
just a critic in general, right? Like the
Yeah, I know.
stereotype of criticism is that you have to hate everything, and criticism
Oh, I
isn't
know, but
isn't a negative. And we always talk about this, but I think you have to reiterate it, is that criticism can be a positive thing. Even when you are criticizing something you like, you need to discuss why it worked for you and how it relates to your perspective, but also the filmmaking of it, and then on top of that, how you feel it might work for somebody else. Even when you don't like something, and Roger Ebert would always talk about this, is that you have to give the movie its day in court. You have to write in a way that still entices the viewer to want to see the movie, even if it's a negative review. You have to show that it's like, oh, that sounds like this person didn't like it, but I kind of like some of
that's
the
an
things they're
interesting
mentioning.
perspective. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
always feel like sure, it's when you say like it's all subjective, or you should just kind of make your own decision. I feel like you find people that you kind of align with, and then you go, oh, I always agree with Matt's opinion or Eric's opinion, or Matt's a moron and I like Eric's opinion more,
Or vice versa, or even just like, oh, you know what, maybe I'll give this a try because I've liked a couple things they've recommended before, and I'm usually on the same wavelength. But then,
or when I say don't
like
something, you're like, I never agree with Matt, so obviously I might like this. So shit like that. That's why these things are always kind of fun. Eric, I know you haven't put together your list. Did you want to take a second to kind of pick 15 and put them in alphabetical order, or while I do my list?
Yeah, sure. I'll just be the guy in the background who's on my phone, just being like, okay.
Or you can, I mean, however you want to do.
Well, I've kind of got. I kind of do have a list. I lied.
Rules, so.
I lied. I was putting something together because you had mentioned wanting to do a sight and sound list.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I was kind of looking.
But that's best films ever. But
yeah,
we might do that on another episode.
I gotta look this up now to find, because I did.
That's going to be a whole nother conversation. But
yeah, the Water Boy on my sight and sound list.
I would like to do a sight and sound episode to put together our best films of all time kind of list. I think could be fun. It's hard to just pick like 10, but I can go through mine, and it's in alphabetical order.
I got 17 movies, so I got to cut a couple.
It's up to you. I mean, we make up the rules. I have 14. You can do 17. I don't give a shit.
I'm doing 17. It was a good year, people. It was a good year.
I could add a couple. It's just I'm going off the graphic I built, which I could only fit 14. So there were a couple movies, and these, if you look at my Letterboxd list, it might not even match up to this list. It's almost like I just ranked them throughout the year on the Letterboxd list, but then when I'm putting together that list, you want to present to the world of what you think the best movies of the year were. You kind of
this is a good representation of Matt and his taste.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ooh, what a connoisseur of film.
So there might be one thing being like, do I need to put Black Panther Wakanda Forever on there? Or do I need to put on what else? Like kind of.
We already mentioned Chip and Dale.
Just wait for my list. Things like a lot of these are on here, like Prey, which I mentioned, or Barbarian, or there's something like, even I mentioned After Sun, and you'll see All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. Like, hey, let me just give you my list, and we can kind of talk about it. And then Eric,
Matt, give it to us. Give us your list.
So these are Matt Rohrbeck's best movies of 2022 in alphabetical order. There's 14. Why is there 14? Like I said, I could fit 14 on the graphic. There's more for you on my Letterboxd at Matt Rohrbeck. Okay, here they are.
Wait. Do you want to maybe say your favorite film of the year, or do you want to save that for the very end and say of these?
I'll do it at the end. I'll do it at the end. I'll list, and then we should do favorite film of the year. I think is good. I mean, I think people know at this point. We've kind of already spoiled that, but
Morbius,
to be official, Morbius. I just list Morbius 14 times. Okay, here are my best films of 2022 in alphabetical order. We have After Sun, After Yang, big year for afters. After Sun, After Yang, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Babylon, The Batman, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Nope, RRR, Top Gun Maverick, and Women Talking. Those are the movies I would like to present to the world for their judgment. Judge me how you please. My favorite film of the year, I debated between three films specifically, mostly just back and forth between two. And I ultimately went with my gut of the first thing that blew my mind this year, and it kind of stuck with me the whole year. So that would be Daniel's Everything Everywhere All at Once. It was close though with RRR. RRR, I remember both movies just right after seeing them and while watching them, I just remember going, oh, holy shit, multiple times. Just two of the most inventive, exciting, and enjoyable,
Visual spectacles
that I've seen in like a long time, with a lot of heart as well, and with some of the best performances of the year as well. So Daniel's Everything Everywhere All at Once is my favorite film of the year. Quickly talking about my list, like I mentioned, I'm glad After Yang stuck with me the whole year. I think that's an underrated movie that came out this year that was early and hasn't really stuck around, and I haven't really heard many people talking about them. A fantastic Colin Farrell performance, fantastic cinematography. It just left me in this kind of trance that I couldn't escape from until it was over, and it's kind of stuck with me the whole year. I thought it was great. You mentioned it as like a great Pinocchio story, so I kind of have like two.
It kind of is though, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to quickly say this. Like,
Yeah,
you have the idea of the father who doesn't realize what he has, and when that is gone, both boys are not real boys, quote unquote, in their father's eyes until much later on in the story, until that realization.
Yeah.
And then you have, the characters sort of mourning or trying to figure out what to do within this world that they live in, whether it be the real world or a potential future. And again, we're seeing the world partly through the Pinocchio or Yang eyes, but at the same time, it's the father realizing who this person is to him. And like that
very
was like,
elegant. I appreciate that. Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't think of it that way until you brought it up the other day, and I really love that. But it stuck with me the whole year. Fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. After Sun, like I said, first time I watched it, I was kind of like, or the only time I watched it, I really want to watch it again with my wife. But I was like, okay, I've seen this story before, and I felt like it was almost too subtle for its own good. But then that subtlety and then the
Creeps
style
in.
kind of crept in, and again, one of the most assured debuts I've seen. And the more I thought about it, and even the stuff that I didn't vibe with as I was watching it, I started to think about more and go, no, you're an idiot. That's what makes the movie very special, or part of what makes the movie very special. Its use of reflections and just and stuff like that is fantastic. All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, I think the best doc I've seen this year. I haven't seen that many, obviously, because I'm terrible. But one of my favorite movies of TIFF. I think one of the most stylish and uh, such a gut punch, but a good character piece as well, and the best juxtaposition I've seen between like a documentary on a person and a topic. And if again, is it out yet, Eric, or did it come
Which
out?
one? All the Beauty and
All
the
the Beauty and the
Bloodshed?
Bloodshed. Yeah.
It's playing in limited release at the
Okay.
Lightbox right now.
Cool. Great. Babylon. Our review will be out on December 23rd when the movie releases, so you guys can kind of get our full thoughts on Babylon. But I think Damien Chazelle made a twisted kind of stepbrother or stepsister to La La Land, and I loved every second of it, all 3 hours and 10 minutes of it as well. An in your face, bombastic kind of both love letter and I don't know, a shit post on literally on Hollywood. So just a depraved kind of how do I describe it? It was like Boogie Nights mixed with La La Land, and just like
Fueled by cocaine.
yeah, just fueled on a mountain of cocaine. So like I I loved Babylon. I can't wait to talk about it with Eric, and I can't wait to watch it again. The Batman stuck around all year. I think my favorite superhero movie of the year. I think Matt Reeves is one of my favorite working directors, especially when it comes to like big budget kind of Hollywood movies. His Planet of the Apes movies, I think, are spectacular, and what he brought to Batman, a character we've seen so many times, to reinvent that again,
Like Pinocchio.
is wild, and to be able to do it as successful as he did is very, very impressive. Chippendale Rescue Rangers, I think the funniest film of the year for me. Like I think I was in the perfect headspace, it came out at the perfect time. I love Lonely Island. Can't believe that they let the guys who made Hot Rod make a Roger Rabbit movie, essentially. So like I think they absolutely crushed it. What Disney allowed them to get away with in that movie, I think, was surprising, and I'm excited to revisit that every once in a while, because like I really laughed my ass off watching Chippendale Rescue Rangers. uh Already spoken a lot about Everything Everywhere All at Once. Don't need to go into that anymore, but my favorite film of the year, it's fantastic. Glass Onion, favorite film of TIFF. This is coming from someone who didn't love Knives Out, but thought Ryan Johnson absolutely crushed it with Glass Onion. One of the most fun movies of the year, with a mystery that is very straightforward, but I loved its social commentary on mediocre men. It's fantastic. It's coming out on Netflix soon, I think, also at the end of the month, near Christmas as well. Is it also the
23rd.
23rd? Yeah,
I think it's 23rd.
also the 23rd with Babylon. Just absolutely crushed it. Everyone in that movie rules. GDT's Pinocchio, we talked a lot about. I think one of the most technically impressive movies I've seen in a very long time. Hearing Guillermo del Toro talk about it even kind of kicked my ass even more, to be like, fuck, this movie is impressive. And but also just a great emotional core to that movie, and not just from the tech standpoint, and probably the best Pinocchio movie. And that's a lot to say, because I think the Disney one, the original Disney one, is a classic, but this is very different. Surprising. Did not expect a lot of the stuff that I saw in that movie. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, just one of the most charming movies of the year. Love the animation style. Love that little dude, and I think just again, a movie that I didn't expect to hit me as hard as it did, but did I cry? Absolutely did. And
Why do you cry?
I think it was fantastic. Nope, like you said, the best Spielberg movie of the year. I think again, that last act, which I wasn't hot on when I first saw it, it's kind of faded away, and I just think the movie as a whole is this spectacle, which is really what it's made for. Is one of the best spectacles of the year. That all the IMAX footage is incredible. The performances are great. It's funny. It's thrilling. It's scary. It's just everything you want in that, like you said, that cinematic experience that we got this year in a lot of films. And you can kind of see a theme for this stuff that I really like this year. RRR, already talked about it a lot. That Lightbox screening kind of reiterated that. I think with Everything Everywhere, it's the I'm choking on my own words. I loved it so much.
It's hard not to.
Just one of the pure cinematic thrill rides I've had in a long time. I mean, same can be said for the next one, Top Gun Maverick, a movie I think no one expected to be as transformative as it was. I couldn't believe it the first time I saw it, of going, oh my God, that was incredible.
He did it. He really did it.
I don't even think we expected anyone to do it. Like the first Top Gun is a fun, not even a fun movie. It's like your dad's favorite movie. It's like it's
It's
got
almost
a
ironically like now because of how
yeah,
cheesy it is, right?
yeah. Has some iconic sequences, but like what Kaczynski and Cruise were able to do with this
I would
of
also say Christopher
and
McQuarrie, right?
McQuarrie and even the cinematographer, I'm blanking
Claudio
on
Miranda.
Claudio Miranda, working with the cast of shooting everything in actual fighter jets, and just like again that last act, and from the moment Cruise kind of jumps back in it and shows everyone how it's done to that whole last act. I mean, the whole fucking movie is incredible.
Also like Pinocchio.
Sure.
Cruz is Geppetto, Miles Teller is Pinocchio. He doesn't
Um,
realize that he's kind of his like pseudo son until the end. They go on
sure,
adventures
sure.
together.
The
Miles
2020
Teller
year,
becomes a real boy.
2022, the year of Pinocchio. And then Women Talking. Sarah Polley coming back after taking a decade off from feature filmmaking. I think is one of the most devastating movies of the year, one of the best edited movies of the year, one of the best ensembles of the year. A great score, just easily one of the best films of the year. Something I've wanted to revisit, but it's such a heavy movie that it's going to be one of those. There are those movies some years too where you only kind of need to see them once and you just know how great they are. That they're not necessarily rewatchable because of the subject matter and how heavy they are. And but Women Talking, just an absolute gut punch, and a fantastic movie. So yeah, I'm really happy with this group of films. Like, I think it's eclectic and very me. I don't know how many other people will have Chippendale Rescue Rangers on their list, but I got to stay true to myself. So
You got to stay true to you while wearing blue.
thank you. Everyone listening on audio is going, what are you talking about? So yeah, man, that's Matt this year. So I'm happy with that.
That's a good curated list though. Like, you have a little bit of everything on there
Got some
all at
animated,
once,
got some action. No Marvel movie this year, which
which
is
is saying something.
yeah, Black Panther, I think
Is
probably
on the
could be that
cusp.
movie that if I'd made 15, right? Like 15's that nice even number that we usually kind of do.
Yeah.
Where if I did like if I'm giving honorable mentions right now, what would be in contention for that, 15th spot? Um I'd say something like Turning Red, um, or Wakanda Forever, or Barbarian, or Prey, Bones and All. Even we mentioned that it's kind of creeping up, uh, eating away at us.
It's following
um,
its nose.
those movies are the ones that I think are in contention for that 15th spot. Um, I had Turning Red on this list originally, but then when I was thinking of like, I wanted, how you do this as well, where you group movies and you go, okay, what animated, you want a little representation from different areas of filmmaking. Like that's why all the Beauty and the Bloodshed, I'm like, I want to have a doc on there. Right. I like, and it's a great movie on top of that. It's not necessarily like me just going, I have to have this in there because of, I need a documentary and so I don't look like an idiot, or I need this because whatever.
You're
It's like, no,
sophisticated, Matt.
these are still I have Chippendale Rescue Rangers. I'm not that sophisticated, but
God, Nan Golden and Chippendale on the
yeah,
same
like,
list.
so like that's what I mean, right? Where I had Pinocchio, I had Chippendale. I'm like, I love Turning Red. The Torontonian in me was like, how could you not put Turning Red
I
on
mean,
this
you're
list? But
basically dressed in Toronto right now.
I know, I really am. But with Marcel, with Pinocchio, and with Chippendale, I'm like, all right, if I had to cut something, maybe it's an animated movie or something like that. And then for me with the MCU stuff is like, I usually always, there's one MCU movie that kicks my ass every year that I just absolutely love. Like, I mean, Spider-Man was my favorite movie last year, I think. But this year, just, I don't know, with Love and Thunder um and Doctor Strange, which both I feel like are weirdly, like, there are some things to enjoy in both of them, but are both very messy movies. I'm also curious, talking about like, revisiting stuff, is like, I've had that itch of doing a Marvel rewatch again. My mom did another one. My mom is more of an MCU person than I am, where
I thought you were going to say Morbius,
she's
man.
yeah, she's rewatched the MCU more times than I have, and she just recently, like, it only took her like a week. Where my mom's retired now, so she's got some free time and she loves watching movies and TV shows, and she likes episodic stuff, right? That's why I think why she loves the MCU. Um, she went back and rewatched the entire MCU, including the TV shows. Um, Recently, she hasn't seen Black Panther yet, but she's rewatched the entire MCU again, and I've had that itch. So, and I'm curious because the last time I did it, my rankings and how I felt about certain movies like completely changed. So, like, I am curious now that we're done phase 4 of like how maybe will I dislike those movies even more? Will they work better? Should I wait until Quantum Mania and those movies? Because maybe when the multiverse stuff starts to, show its when Kang starts to show its face a little bit more and we understand where everything's going, um, will I enjoy some of those other movies more because the puzzle pieces are starting to actually connect to make an actual picture? um I don't know, but I have had that itch to watch more MCU stuff. But anyways, I don't know why I went on that diatribe. These are the best movies of the year: After Sun, After Yang, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Babylon, The Batman, Chippendale Rescue Rangers, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion, GDT's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Nope, RRR, Top Gun Maverick, and Women Talking. Eric, it's your turn, baby.
Okay, so I have to make a couple of small adjustments here. I am now doing a top 20 list, and I am
Oh my
including Bones and
God.
all. Well, because I also like an even list, and I forgot a couple when you mentioned them that I didn't put in my 16 or 17, so
You
I put those in.
indecisive motherfucker.
I know. You know what? I will, for the actual graphic, I will cut it down. I will cut it
Okay,
down to
that's fair.
14.
I
Okay.
mean, we make up the rules. You can do as many movies as you want. You could,
But there's even a couple movies that I
go
could
through your
still.
whole letterbox list, ranking 1 to 300 of every movie you watched this year.
Okay, so here we go, and I won't stay on them too long because
Here
there
are
are
Eric's 20 best films of 2022.
yes, After Sun, After Yang, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, The Banshees of Inisherin, The Batman, Bones and All, Decision to Leave, EO, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Glass Onion, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Nope, The Northman, One Fine Morning, Return to Seoul, RRR, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, and Turning Red.
I love it. A lot of crossover there.
Yeah.
Obviously, only a couple of things we really disagree on.
Tar
But
would
if you
probably
want
be the
to,
main one.
probably the main one. But did you want to elaborate on your list as a whole, or go
Yeah,
for it?
I think like this year, again, we've been talking a lot about it where, like, it just depends on the day and how you feel. You
Yeah.
could kind of like, there's even a couple things on here that I was touched by emotionally with, like Armageddon Time, that's not on this list but could be on the list depending on, again, how I feel. But then, like After Sun is that movie where the first time I watched it, I really, really liked it a lot, and it kind of stuck with me throughout the entire festival season with Tiff and just thinking about it. And then rewatching it again, it somehow was like watching it for the first time and reliving the memory anew. And when I saw it that second time, it kind of became more clear to me that it was something that was truly unlike anything else I had watched this year. And even though Everything Everywhere All at Once and RRR were two movies that completely blew me away in terms of, their ambition and how skillful they were but playful, I kind of kept thinking about After Sun, and anytime I would hear someone else talk about it and finding it for the first time, it would only make me love the movie even more. And like that it would, because again, it is one of those films where I think if you're not on its wavelength, it's a harder movie to get into, but if you do give it a chance and it does wash over you, it's a film that rewards you in such a beautiful way, and it is so personal and so distilled into this one moment, but there is so much that Charlotte Wells is giving to you an audience member that's very specific but still relatable, and you just kind of go on this trip, this detour into her memory and into this one moment, and it's just so vivid and real and doesn't feel like a film in the sense that you can like watch, having watched it twice, and I do want to watch it again, but it is a movie where it's like it's both very much a movie you can go back to, but you need to give it a little bit time between
It's quietly
viewings.
devastating, yeah. So it's just like
Yeah. But it's a film like watching it twice, you know, you watch a movie over and over again, you start to see the seams. Even if you love the movie, you see the little kind of imperfections that, you know, Guillermo del Toro talks about with Pinocchio. You know, those are the reason why you love something, because you see, you know, the people that made it, you know, the fingerprints that they leave behind. And with After Sun, yeah, it's made by somebody specifically, and there is a collaboration process, but when watching it, it doesn't feel like I'm seeing any of the cuts or any of the transitions, and the way that the camera moves doesn't feel, it is showy, but it's not at the same time. It's perfectly controlled, but it's also organic. And there are very few movies that I can tell you that feel like a stream of consciousness in a way that this does,
yeah.
and does it in a way that is completely assured. And I'm still trying to figure out how the hell Charlotte Wells pulled that off. And this being her first feature length film, like this is something that someone would build up to, you know, their fourth or fifth movie once they've had some time to experience, you know, the medium and understand the language of the form. And when you watch After Sun, you're just like, this person knows exactly what they need in order to tell this story, and how to do so in such a moving but not manipulative manner. And Paul Mescal's performance is incredible. Frankie Corio is an amazing discovery. The setting, again, like it's a hangout movie, but it's, as you mentioned, quietly devastating, and that final act just sneaks up on you and hits you in a way that is so well earned. I really, again, hope more people will give it a shot. It's a film that only really had a limited release, like just in terms of like even like, you know,
Yeah.
where I am, like it didn't play at Landmark. It only was a limited release in Toronto. Like that was the closest
Yeah, that's
place to go and
surprising.
see
Yeah.
it.
It didn't really even expand to the suburbs, right?
No, and that's unfortunate, because again, it's just one of those movies where it's like I
Could have
will tell.
benefited from one of those like A24 like Apple TV kind of things or something. Like
Yeah, but
I
I
know
think
it's
this
a
is a movie that needs to be
I
seen in the
I
theater.
know, but people aren't going
I
to.
know,
Like that's
I
what
know.
so I would rather people see it than be like, you got to see it in a theater, when most people are going to go, I don't need to see this movie in a theater. Like I get you're saying that, but you like, my argument would be the majority of people won't go see that movie in a theater. So I would
Right.
rather them just see it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I
that's
do.
why
I don't
yeah.
disagree with you, but I do feel that, you know, like we had the opportunity to see it in a theater, and even though I really loved it the second time and I watched it on a screener the second time, I do feel that first time is really important for that movie, because I think that, again, we've talked about this before, where it's not necessarily the movie's fault. Sometimes, you know, you procrastinate or you have all these distractions around you, whether it be your phone or life in general, that it's easy to kind of pause something like After Sun and then put it to the side. And weirdly, it's almost like that's part of like what the memory is. You know, you pause it and then play it and come back to it and kind of look at it as though like you're reliving a moment. But there is just something about seeing that in the theater that kind of like you need to be completely open to it, and you need to give your patience and focus to what Wells is doing. But I also understand it's one of those things where, you to get more people to see it, it would probably be good to have something like an Apple TV Plus kind of promote it maybe a little bit more. But it is going to be available.
But it could get buried on one of those too. So like, I'm just saying like it, I don't know. Like
it's a harder movie to push. It's a harder, like it needs the critical support in order to keep afloat. And I think it's gotten that. And I think people are still talking about it in a way, at least when it comes to the critics.
The people who love it will yell it from the rooftops for sure. Yeah. And it'll help for people like you, prominent film critics with lots of pull, saying
with a Rotten Tomatoes account
that will say it's amazing, and that
prominent critic
and people will go, damn, Eric Marchin said it was best film of the year. So
I disagree. What a piece of shit.
No, I think it is one of those movies that I think will be a discovery for a lot of people. That I mean, it could go either way. Like again, we almost said it, like it's almost too subtle for its own good, in the sense of like,
it never spoon feeds you.
Yeah, like I could see a modern moviegoer going, this is boring, or something like that, which we kind of brought up in our review, but like that's doing the movie a disservice and not giving it a fair shot. And if like you said, if you are on its wavelength, then you're in for a fantastic movie. So I hope people do give it a shot. And I think with more and more people saying like, this is one of the best films of the year, I just hope people get a chance to see it. And sorry, I cut you off. You said it's going to be available soon on VOD,
yes, on iTunes. Yeah. So I think it's December 20th. It's available at least in Canada. And I think actually A24 in the US is having it it's going to be a part of their screening room. So that
they always do that. Yeah.
That it's coming to VOD.
Mm-hmm. They, A24 has a great marketing department, and
we should have cut it together like an elevated horror movie. Get more people to see it.
I think because of Everything Everywhere and then putting like all of their chips into that might be like, okay, well, maybe we'll promote this more when it's out on VOD, or maybe do some more, I don't know, like a special edition, like Blu-ray or something like that. I could even see a Criterion release for that. I don't know if have we gotten much A24 stuff on Criterion?
Uncut Gems.
Yeah, that was the first big one, right? The first big collaboration. But
they're also doing their own in-house
special
Blu-rays
editions
now, like Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, The Green Knight, The Souvenir,
which
Part
all
1
look
and 2.
great. I just wish shipping prices weren't so much on the A24 shop. Because their collector's editions are great. It's just like you got to pay. I even like the children's books that the Daniel Kwan.
Oh yeah, I should get that for Ivor.
Yeah, I was gonna get them for my buddy Kevin. Just had a kid, one of my good friends. And there's 2 children's books that they wrote, and I would love, because no one else is going to buy those for him, and they'll be the weirdest kids books that he probably gets for his kid, and very me. But they're $55 for both books, and then with shipping and everything, you're going to pay over $100.
$200 almost.
You're going to spend.
Is it American to Canadian?
Yeah, and then their Blu-rays though. I didn't see the Marcel one yet, but the Green Knight one is gorgeous. The Midsommar one is gorgeous. The Last Black Man in San Francisco one is gorgeous. I think they have Lamb. The Souvenir double set is great as well.
Do you see Marcel yet?
Yeah, I just see Marcel. See, they're beautiful. Like I want all of these.
They're beautiful.
Like, and they always release them in 4K as well. And like, you can tell like they put a lot of effort into their releases. So maybe they'll do that for that as well. I hope they do more. I would like an Everything Everywhere special edition as well.
I mean, you know what they could do a little more for? They could put a little effort in and make a really good special edition of Under the Silver Lake, a movie they basically abandoned, which is underrated.
I absolutely agree with you. I've had an itch to rewatch that as well. Like to take an edible and just watch that movie, I think would be a blast. Eric, go through what else do you want to highlight on your list? I know we had some crossover, so maybe you can highlight whatever you want. But
I really loved that this year we had a couple kind of mystery kind of movies with Decision to Leave as well. I really love that movie quite a bit. I think Park Chan-wook is one of those filmmakers that, one of the very few that is an event filmmaker that everything he does is worth going to the theater for. The latest movie on this list in terms of what I watched was Jerzy Skolimowski's EO, which is the film about a donkey who kind of travels throughout Europe, and from its perspective, you see parts of the culture, whether it be from footballers' point of views or circus acts, things like that. And it's always kind of, it's Bressonian, but it's also doing something on its own. It's very experimental with the cinematography. It's using drone cameras in a way that I haven't really seen before, in a very kind of innovative manner. The director of this movie, probably best known now to North American audiences as the guy who has captured Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson's character in Avengers, or spits in Viggo Mortensen's face in Eastern Promises.
So best MCU movie of the year, EO.
Yes, it is canon. But it's one of those films that kind of feels like, again, you have movies like RRR and Nope and this making a point about animal cruelty and our relationships to animals, and how, like Nope and EO specifically, but like even RRR, with how it's kind of, removing any potential harm to animals and not having live action animal actors in any of their scenes, and using CGI to fully explore the potential of any sort of set piece. Where with Nope and this, it kind of felt like there is an interesting dialogue there about animal cruelty, and how, when we first see EO, he's basically a circus donkey, and sort of, the progression of the character from beginning to end. It's the closest I've felt in terms of having that reaction where you watch a movie and you feel like maybe you should become a vegan, in the way that Okja is kind of devastating in that emotional way. And it is an art house film, but it's only an hour and 28 minutes. And it's such a weird, but also kind of spiritual journey. It kind of plays with the filmmaking. There's this whole sequence shot in red that kind of is just out of this world, and it's not exactly what you're expecting it to be, but it still is very experimental. And then Isabelle Huppert shows up for like 8 minutes in the movie, and you're like, what the hell is going on? But in the best
She's
possible.
The voice of the donkey.
I wish, but no. It's just one of those films where it's like, it's out now. It's Poland's submission for Best International Film. I highly recommend giving it a shot, especially like if you live in a major city like Toronto. It's playing at the Lightbox. The texture, the look of it is beautiful. It is a really kind of all-consuming experience. So check that out. Another movie that I added that was an earlier film from the year that I think deserves a lot of credit in terms of its filmmaking is Robert Eggers' The Northman. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think in the way that it blends both special effects and sort of in-camera sequences is incredible. The way it plays with both fairy tale and sort of, real world, or kind of real world aspects, and the fantasy elements is amazing. I love the chapter sort of breakup of each sequence, the Nightblade and sort of where that goes. And I think the final act, or that final sequence, is amazing. And it's kind of just like, it's truly a fascinating take on the whole sort of machismo and sort of male kind of revenge story, and sort of a take on it that we've seen before, but done in a way that feels completely channeled by a filmmaker that has to be as authentic as possible, to the point where like he's literally not only building sets, but he's having the costume department build and make shoes from that period. And it's just, there's just something about it that kind of feels otherworldly and dreamy, that I really appreciated. A couple international movies that we both saw at TIFF. I really loved One Fine Morning. I think Leah Seydoux is incredible in that film. I really love Mia Hansen-Løve as a director. I think Bergman Island last year was amazing, and this as a follow-up is maybe not as clever with what it does with one of its techniques in that movie, but it is still emotionally
It's
poignant,
great. Yeah.
especially with, you know, the father-daughter dynamic and having to look after somebody who, you know, was once revered for um, their intelligence and their independence, having to depend on the next generation to look after them, and the complications that ensues, especially when you're also trying to live your own life and trying to look after your own child and have a relationship, a romantic relationship with somebody else. And those things are just so beautifully done and very effortless. Like, it's just, it's a movie where you could watch it and be easy to criticize that it's, oh, anyone can make this kind of movie. I think it's very hard to make that film feel so organic, and it does so beautifully. Return to Seoul is a movie that I've been thinking a lot about, just in terms of, you know, one thing I've always loved in movies is identity, and sort of looking at how, you know, people sort of reconcile with who they are and where they come from and their ancestry, and, you know, the feeling of abandonment or not knowing your complete heritage, and the idea of having somebody who, you know, is French Korean but also kind of feeling like, you know, they're reconnecting with the Korean side of their family, but also feeling like they were basically abandoned, and having very mixed thoughts on that overall, I think is a really powerful story. The lead performance is incredible. There were just moments that are very surreal. There are aspects that actually include the pandemic that kind of, you know, would usually take you out of a movie, but I think add to where the film ultimately ends up.
I will
Tar
jump
is
in and say I had both One Fine Morning and Return to Seoul on my Critics' Choice Best International Film.
Hell yeah. And they're both worthy of being there, and I think more people will discover those films, because I mean they've played the festival circuit starting at Cannes, but you know, One Fine Morning will be released in February, and Return to Seoul, at least in Toronto. I think February is also Return to Seoul in the US, but in Canada it's the beginning of March. Both are Mongrel Media here. And then Tar is one of those movies that I think I've loved having conversations with you, because the thing I absolutely love the movie. I think it is meticulously made. I think that there is so much going on, and even having another conversation as you're just wiping your brow, having a chance to talk to somebody else that um, found even more detail than I, you know, have had conversations with other people. Molly Raspberry, like, it's one of those films I want to go back and rewatch, and how it's structured and plays with credibility and identity, and also, you know, the period in which we are in now, I think is really fascinating. But I also really appreciate your perspective on the film and understand that perspective very well,
Do we?
because
It's fine. I mean, do
and
we?
and
My
I
perspective, not the movie.
no, no,
But
no,
like,
no, 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 no. But this thing, I think your opinion on the film, because you didn't like it, is still like, if we both liked everything everywhere all at
it would be
once,
boring. Yeah, no,
it
I
would
get
be
it.
boring.
I mean,
And I
and that
think
goes
you,
for anything, really. Yeah.
yeah, and I think you need those movies to make you understand that, one, your opinion isn't better or worse than anybody else, but two, it's also good to hear a different perspective, whether it be
Yawning already.
positive, negative, or neutral, and understand that there's going to be those perspectives.
Yeah,
And I think it
and
makes you a
if
better
every movie,
person.
it's why, you know. Yeah, I agree. It's my wife Nevis watched the movie recently, so I've been talking about it more with her. She enjoyed it quite a bit. Um, felt it was slow to get going, but then she really enjoyed it as kind of um you know, the last kind of half of the movie started to play out. Um, I don't need to. You can go listen to our review. Really, I don't really have much more to say. It's faded from my mind to the point, you know, when you just don't care for something, and it's just like, I
Yeah.
don't know, it's just exhausting for me to talk about it and try to explain my side um of it. And I know I'm in the minority, but I don't want to take it away from, you know, you and people who do really enjoy it. But
No, but again, I
um
think it is something to value both sides of a positive and a negative opinion on something, because not everything is, you know, Top Gun is a movie we both loved, but it's also made to be loved by the masses. Like, it is kind of designed in that way, right? Like, it's thought of like, how
This
do
is
we
for the
make the best.
critics, not the fans.
Well, I wasn't going to say go that far,
I'm
but
kidding.
Top Gun Maverick
Matt
is
and
a
Man of the
movie
People.
that is made where it's like, okay, we want to make this movie as accessible as possible, to the point where we won't even have we won't name the country of origin for the villains, like that's how kind of broad
Agnostic.
appeal
Like,
we want
we don't want to
for
offend
this.
anyone, so let's
Yeah,
just
where Tar isn't that. Tar
no,
is a movie that's going to rub people the wrong way. It's going to challenge people. It's going to have opinions that are varied in terms of what Todd Field is attempting to say or do. And those are the movies I love the most, because you're not going to just get the same opinion again and again and again. You're going to get your opinion. You're going to get my opinion. You're going to get somebody else's opinion. And those opinions, I think, are going to be even more varied from each person to person. But it's just something where, again, like that meticulous detail, the way that like Field drops you into a world that 99% of people have almost probably no familiarity with, or are uncomfortable with, or feel overwhelmed by, because they think that the film is talking down to them, which it very much could be, depending on your opinion of the movie. I think is a really interesting choice. Even the way that he structures the credits, where the people that made the movie are usually never given their due, because we're leaving the theater by the time those credits play. And so him playing the credits at the top of the film up until his name and Cate Blanchett's name comes up, I think is a really interesting choice, and is saying something about the film, and also Lydia Tarr as a character. So there's a lot going on there. Whether or not you agree or disagree with it, that's why I love movies so much. It's always fun to have those conversations, because again, like, it's something like, if one of us liked Elvis, I think it would be the same thing. Or if one of us liked Dune, or I mean, there's some things that you've liked
those
more
are
than
most,
me, but
those are, yeah, I know. Sure, there might be a 1-star difference, and that could go from a 3-star to a 2-star, or 3-star to a 4-star, or 5-star to a 4-star. Like, we're usually not that far off, even if we disagree. And because we're good friends, we don't really yell at each other, or are too far off to go, you're crazy, or whatever. Like,
but you
we don't
shouldn't
get into those.
anyways. That's the
Oh,
thing.
no,
Even
no,
if you don't know
never,
the person, you should never get
I think
upset
those
that they
things
have
can
a
be
different
fun
opinion.
if it's in jest, right? Like,
Yeah.
I got heated during Tar, but that was mostly playing up each side of it, right? And just trying to have a funny end cap to that review. And I was passionate in how much I disliked that movie. But yeah, I agree with you that the most interesting conversations you're going to have is to be open to hearing someone else's perspective. And I am curious, because like, we've already had good conversations about Tar. I struggle with, I see so much, and that like, when I don't like something, I kind of just erase it from my brain, which isn't like the best thing, but like, it's also just how my brain works, where it's like, didn't like that thing, never want to think about it again, I'm on to the next thing that I enjoy. So it's hard for me to even go back and go, okay, how do I feel about Tar? I know I didn't like it. Um, and then I go, I guess I gotta either listen to my own review, or go back and say to people, like, go listen to that if you want my more thoughtful kind of like conversations about the movie. Because I even found myself talking with my wife of just being like, I kind of have like the cliff notes of like how I felt, and like what what happened in the movie and things like that. But to articulate how I was feeling, I was like, when I don't like something, I just kind of like wipe it. It's just like, I only have so much hard drive space, and I don't want to hold that for things that I don't like. So I just move on from it. But it is interesting when you bring up like best films of the year, and when people, I love that everything's subjective, and I really do. And like, I hate when, you want to disagree with people. You want to have interesting conversations and hear other people's perspectives. And I am curious, because for someone who thought the movie was very one note, to find someone who finds a lot of detail, or nuance, or meaning in different little things in the movie, is interesting. Because I found it very like, oh, talented person does shitty things, and that was it.
And we
right?
accept it because
And
they are talented.
that's what I
And
mean. Put the art
yeah.
before the artist. That's what I thought the thesis of the movie was.
Or
and
let
then
the
I just,
artist get away with it because of the art.
that's putting the art before the artist, right? That's exactly
Right.
what that is just, so to me, that thesis statement, I didn't get much nuance there. It was just like, oh, okay. But I'm interested. It's fascinating, right? When you feel so differently than someone else, to get their side of things. And I think everyone should go in with an open mind when you're talking to someone, and don't take it personally, right? Like, if you don't agree with someone, it's totally fine. It's
Yeah, they're
like,
not offending you.
It's
It's
all
not like they're
subjective.
saying
You
you're
didn't make the
dumb for
movie,
liking it. Yeah.
or you didn't make the movie. You have no personal, like, again, yeah, just because you're trying to say why you didn't think it worked doesn't mean you're trying to insult the other person who did, and vice versa. So, and I think that everyone's guilty of it. You get passionate about something, and you start to get a little heated in a debate with someone, but try to
the
try to
only
keep it
thing I
simple.
will argue though with you on that is that I think Tar had more of an effect on you, even if you don't remember it or don't want to remember it, than say something like the 355.
Oh
or
no, and I brought
Scream
this
or
up to
something.
Nevis. I said the exact same thing to her, where I said, I'll take something that I really don't like over something I have no thoughts on at all. Right. And Tar, I still remember Tar. I'm sort of being facetious in the sense that I didn't like it, so I erased it from my memory. But like, there are those certain movies where you just don't remember anything. You don't even remember how you feel about them, right? Because they are just so middle of the road that you forgot they even existed. Where I'm not going to forget that Tar existed, right? Like, I remember how I felt sitting through that screening, and how much it was a struggle for me to get through it, and how much I didn't like it, and I had something to say in our review because of that. And I'll take those movies, maybe I would have liked it to not be 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I'll take those movies over something that's just forgettable any day of the week. So I completely agree with you there. Yeah. At least I had a strong opinion on it, right? The movies where you just go, I don't really have anything to say about this, is kind of like, and those movies,
Better write this review quickly or I'll forget.
Those movies you might give a better score, which scores are, who cares anyway? It's just a number or a star rating. But like, I might give something a 2.5 or a 3 that I technically gave a better rating to than Tar. But Tar is more interesting, in air quotes, because I gave it a 1. Because at least it was memorable to me because it was a 1, right? And because I really didn't like it, rather than that movie I gave a 3, where I'm like, it was fine, and I don't really have anything to say. Any Ron Howard movie, pick them out of a hat. So
could you imagine Ron Howard's Tar?
It'd be the most vanilla ass fucking thing. Like, as much as I'd say, what was Todd Field trying to say? In a Ron Howard movie, you'd be like, okay, I see what he's saying, but who gives a shit?
Right.
Or
this is so sad. Like, I was thinking about this because we both didn't love The Whale, although we didn't hate it either the way that some people are. But I was thinking, okay, Darren Aronofsky wasn't the right choice, probably
my least favorite DA movie, though.
Yeah. DA Darren Aronofsky, District Attorney. Darren Aronofsky, I don't think was probably the right choice for that as a director. But I can also see the Ron Howard version of The Whale and think that that's just as bad or even worse.
More offensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, and before we move off Tar, and you can just finish with a quick hits of your last couple or whatever, the ending, not saying what the ending is, but this was a debate with Nevis and I. Is it looking down on that type of art, I guess, or is it the character? Like, is it saying like this character would be looking down at that, and it's a fall from grace for her because she has to do that? Or how do you interpret? Do you know what I mean? I don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
I guess. Like, do you think the movie? Because I go, is the movie going like, look what she has to do now? Like, in kind of poking fun at that genre and that art form, or is it because of the movie, how it portrays the character, that character would believe that look at what I have to resort to now. But it's not necessarily a movie or Todd Field saying that.
Yeah, because it is,
and you know,
very,
someone who cares about that art form, that I go, is it poo-pooing on it, or is it not?
I think both are valid, but I think there's a third one as well. I think,
Okay.
and the one that I kind of think I'm closest to is that it's the most apathetic one, where it's like ultimately no one cares.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody cares about, like, outside your own little bubble, outside your own world, a job's a job.
Right.
And nobody cares that it's this person doing this, or that these people are listening to this person doing this. It's just you're still doing it, you know,
Right.
whether that's good or bad.
Even if you had to, yeah,
you're still doing it in some capacity, but ultimately nobody cares. Like the people that are watching her perform at the end probably don't care who it is, or don't know who it is.
Who she is. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with movie making, right? Like it's the same thing with filmmaking. We talk about this all the time with, like, if you go up to somebody and say, like, can you name a film director? People will maybe say
we put
Spielberg.
so much weight onto who directed a movie, where most people aren't even going to know who directed it or care.
We're outside of the industry, outside of press, outside of critics. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody does. I'm now sounding like James Cameron. No one gives a shit, and they don't. And I think that's kind of what that ending is. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. I think
you can interpret it any three of those ways, right? Yeah. I get that. Cool. We'll talk more without trying to spoil it for people. But okay, rapid fire. Anything else you want to highlight?
Yeah, I just want to say that Domishi's Turning Red is
great. It's fantastic.
An amazing film, because it is so subversive to the point where I kept forgetting that it is a Disney Pixar film.
I know. I think that would be my 15th movie. I'm calling it right now.
Yeah, because I kept, like, I was looking at I was just like, it's like, oh, you know, I got Marcel the Shell with shoes on. I'm going to be the contrarian and not, you know, I'm going to rebel against the Disney movie. Yeah. And I also have Turning Red, which is not a Disney movie, but it's like, it is a Disney movie, but it's not a Disney movie, because, like, what it's doing feels like it's moving, you know, away. It's obviously lovingly doing it, but it's moving away from, you know, traditional fare, you know, and trying to do something new within the Pixar realm. And it kind of felt like the freshest Pixar movie in
we were
probably
robbed
a decade.
From seeing it in a theater.
Yeah.
Robbed. Maybe that's what Bob Iger will do. He'll go every Pixar movie in a theater moving forward. We're not just going to throw it on Disney Plus. Although that is kind of hopefully what Iger does with creatives, because he's got a good rep with them. That, like, we talked a little bit about, like, well, what does it really do when you bring in a CEO, or what does a CEO really do? I don't know if in the Iger era we would have seen Pixar movies on Disney Plus. I don't know, but I'm glad now. I hope it gets like a re-release or something. Maybe Lightbox does a Toronto Films kind of thing, and we get to see it at Lightbox once or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that kind of sucks, because like this, again, this is entitlement coming into play. You know, being Critics' Choice members, you know, there have been screenings for Turning Red in LA and New York, and it's kind of like, that's the one time where it's like, man, I really do wish I lived in LA, or I was at, like, the scheduling worked for one of the trips that we took. And like, that's one of those movies where it's like, it really, I think, would benefit from watching it on a big screen. And maybe there's also a little bit of bias towards it because of the Toronto aspect, but it really does feel like it was kind of pushing the storytelling in a way that was very fresh and fun. And oh no, I forgot a movie on my list.
Too late now. Late now.
Damn it.
What's it's 21 honorable mention?
David Cronenberg's Crimes of the Future. I think that is a very good movie. And, like, in terms of, like, having a great sort of representation of a body of work, pun intended, because he is the body horror guy. It's not necessarily the first movie I would show you to represent David Cronenberg, but it is one that gives you a sense of everything that he represents.
It has a place on an Eric list for sure.
Like, always. Like, I mean, I love it so much that I've already pre-ordered it on 4K. So, and I already have the
gotta get that body horror on 4K. Anything else you want to kind of?
No, let's get to the end so I don't change anything.
You'll change it again, but once you you can submit your 15 or 14 to me, and I'll make a nice little graphic, and then You know, there's obviously, even on mine, like there was some stuff that I had to leave off for, you know, Jackass Forever would be one of those movies that I would put in an honorable mention. Like if I'm doing like almost like a best of 20, like 25 best films or something like that. Triangle of Sadness, I really liked. Fablemans, which is faded, but still a great movie. Things like that. So, surprised. Did you have Fablemans on your list either? No,
No.
see, it's both kind of faded from both of
Yeah.
us. The faded fatal fate. I'll just
Love
leave it on.
Hobblemans.
Before we wrap, I want to read something that was funny that popped up in my Twitter feed before we go. This is from, I don't know, it's spreading online right now, but this is One Take News that tweeted this. According to several Warner executives, Dwayne Johnson and his team purposefully leaked a financial sheet filled with false assumptions to Deadline to make it seem like Black Adam was a financial success. That's allegedly, but why I read that is because the first tweet on that made me laugh a lot. Was, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? It's the books. And I thought that was really funny.
Oh,
That
man.
story is hilarious and wild, but I don't know if this is true. This is just a tweet that came across my feed, but I just thought that follow-up tweet of, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? The books is really, really funny. What a year.
Black Adam
This
is
was
a
the year of
success
Black Adam.
if you want to spin it any way you can.
Oh, The Rock. The Rock. The year of Black Adam, the year of the Warner Brothers Discovery, fiasco. What other big news stories this year? I don't know. But the Black Adam one triggered the Warner Brothers Discovery. I never remember news stories because like it just
it is the definition of recency bias, where it's like the most current thing you'll remember, but kind of what defined the year, unless it was truly impactful in a way that kind of you'll still be thinking about even after the year is over. There wasn't really anything. I mean, I'm sure there is. I'm sure someone's screaming in our, their ear pods right now, being like, "It's this," but it's like, I can't think of like any big shakeup.
I'm sure there was, but
even just outside of film, like in general, sometimes it's nice not to have anything. I mean, there
like
are
the Batgirl one but... is a big one, right? Like, which also.
Oh, we're just talking about movie stuff. Okay, yeah.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't know any real news we don't talk about on this show. No. But yeah, next week I'm excited for our most anticipated films of 2023. That should be fun. We're still trying to figure out how we want to do it. Sometimes we come in with a prepared list where Eric and I talk beforehand and kind of put our Untitled list that we want to put out. This time we're like, do we debate it on the podcast to try to win over one another, to try to get a movie like Saw X on the list?
Get out of here.
Or when I got Super Mario on the list, which looked to me is paying off because I can't fucking wait. Eric, you don't even know how many times I've watched the Super Mario Brothers trailer and that clip that they did at the Game Awards, which we'll talk about next week.
I don't want to know, man. I don't want to know.
Can't wait. This week seems like a big one because Avatar, because like they're releasing Oppenheimer images, so we're probably going to get another Oppenheimer trailer. I know there's a Mission Impossible not Ghost Protocol, Dead Reckoning Part 1 IMAX thing that's attached to Avatar as well, so maybe we'll get another thing from that. Spider-Verse, other things. Will all these movies make our list? You'll have to see. But I'm excited to do that episode as well. But it's been a fun year, my friend. Always a pleasure. I can't believe we've been doing this show for half a decade. Can you?
Almost as long as it took to make Avatar 2.
Because wasn't it 2018, 2017? 2017 when we started, right?
I think so.
So it's been
we've been doing this longer, obviously. In
other
forms,
but I mean this show, right? Like we've been doing this for almost a decade or more, but this show already being 5 years old or something like that, coming up in August of next year.
Yep.
is going to be crazy, but most of that has been like I forget that the pandemic's been 3.5 years or whatever, 3 years, 4 years.
Oh god. I mean, it's still going on too. Like it's not like it hasn't left. It's just that we
that's why
have
it's a continuous
vaccinations
count
now. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you guys want to see
my favorite
both...
Sesame Street character, continuous count.
Is it the Count's brother?
Yeah. See count.
So if you guys want to see both Eric and I's full lists, I'll put them up on the Untitled Movie Podcast Letterboxd.
I'll edit to 14.
Sure. And then whatever. Those lists can be whatever you want them to be. Actually, yeah, I'll do them alphabetical. We'll put both these same lists. We'll tweet these out. We'll put them on socials, all that kind of stuff. But the one-stop shop for everything, head over to Letterboxd, which is Untitled_movies. It's on all social medias as well. And you can follow me at Matt Rohrbeck.
And you can find more of my video reviews on rogerstv.com/cinemascene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
It's Morbin time. Magic Mike's not until next year.